Why is composing music difficult? Or is it difficult? Or is it just some people find it difficult? I'd like to present a couple of ideas in this video, and if you are a composer or are interested in music composition, you might find this interesting, and I would certainly like your feedback. Music has been called a language. Now, as humans, we pick up language from our surroundings when we are babies and toddlers and growing up and so on. Some people are born into musical families. Their parents, their siblings play musical instruments, or perhaps they just listen to music all the time. And if you are born into such an environment, I guess in a sense, music could be called your second language. But I don't think that applies to everyone. Quite interestingly, some of the great classical composers came from musical families. I've no idea if our modern composers, or in fact, if you come from a musical family, if you can shed any light on that, then that would be interesting. Please leave a comment below. Now, I come from a very non-musical family. My parents were not at all musical. My dad was one of 9 brothers and sisters, and not one of them was musical. I have dozens of cousins, and as far as I know, none of them are musical at all. So where my interest in music came from, I really have no idea. I do remember as a kid listening to pop music on the Radio Luxembourg. If you are in the UK or Europe, you may remember that. If you are a certain age, Pirate Radio, you may remember that as well. When I was at school, that was a major topic of conversation, so I tried to keep up with it, and I really liked a lot of the music that I heard. I was also curious about classical music, so even as a youngster, maybe 10 or 12 or so, I listened to a lot of classical music on Radio 3. So if music, being a musician and being a composer, is a product of your musical environment, then I was a very late starter. Now, I bring this up for a couple of reasons. If you browse certain forums, you will see that people ask, how do I write a piece of music in such and such a genre? Now, I find the answers to some of these questions very interesting, because I could still do with help with my music compositions. Now, I think even today, in order to be a serious composer, you need to go to college, university, study music, get a degree in music. But if you want to produce, shall we say, pop music or rock music or join a band, then you don't need any qualifications at all. Well, you need to be able to play an instrument to a certain degree of proficiency, and probably if you are an original band, you need to be able to write music, or at least contribute to the band's compositions in some way. But shall we say, modern music does not necessitate a degree or official academic learning. Now, this sort of brings us on a little bit to music theory. If you are fairly comfortable with your knowledge of music theory, that's fine. But again, I see a lot of comments and a lot of questions from people who are not so familiar with music theory. And some people try to avoid learning music theory, saying this is going to restrict their compositional abilities and force them down a particular path. Now, I think that's quite an interesting take on the subject, because when I was learning music, and I was writing music as soon as I could virtually play the piano, probably because I couldn't play anything else, so whatever I hit, I was making that up. I do remember when I started out playing the piano and learning music theory, I guess, although I never thought of it as learning music theory. I learned how to form chords, and I used to put chords together in orders and sequences which I thought sounded good. That ultimately is, I think, how music should be composed. But when you start to learn the formal aspects of music, such as the circle of fifths, for example, I guess it is sort of possible to get stuck into restricted or limited chord sequences if you are just following the circle of fifths. But I think you just have to go a little bit beyond and get to know it a little bit better to easily break out of that. So I don't know any musician or any YouTuber who says, no, you don't need to know music theory, that's fine. Well, yes, you do not need to know music theory to compose music. I'll get onto that in a second. But I think everyone would agree that it does certainly help. It gives you more options. It offers more selections, more different harmonic choices once you get to know it. I'm just using the circle of fifths as an example. There are different aspects of music theory which you may or may not find helpful and useful in composing music. So let's just move on to this second part. Composing music is difficult, or is it? Well, when I was composing music, I didn't know what the circle of fifths was. I just played notes on the piano, and if they sounded good, I thought, oh yeah, that's all right, and there's a composition. And I think a lot of people, certainly when they're starting, do something very similar. And I think that is absolutely great, because you are releasing your creativity, and initially, certainly, I think that is what composing music is about. Now, when you get further down the line and start writing music for other people, for movies or for media productions, for example, or when you start writing pop songs or rock songs, then that is possibly a slightly more complicated issue and another kettle of fish. But initially, I think expressing yourself creativity through music composition, whatever it may sound like, I think is a good thing. So to address this second part, or is it complicated, is it difficult, I would say it doesn't have to be. Just express yourself creatively using music as a medium, and don't worry too much about the academic side of music and music theory. If you are really interested in music composition and how music is constructed and put together in, shall we say, traditional ways, and I'm not necessarily talking about classical music, there are certain methods and processes that producers of different types of music use, and you can dig into that if you are interested in any particular type of music. So the bottom line here, if you want to take away, is if you are interested in composing music, just go for it. Do your thing. It really doesn't matter what it sounds like. Honestly, if you are enjoying yourself, if you enjoy the composition process, then that is the ultimate bottom line. Now, having said all that, I would be really interested to know what your thoughts are. Are you a musician? Are you a composer? Do you come from a musical background? I'm very curious about that. Do you know any famous musicians who do or do not come from a musical background? This is a very unscientific questionnaire, if you like. Would you like to compose music, but do you struggle for some reason? Let me know in the comments. If you found this video interesting or thought-provoking, I hope you did, then perhaps you would like to consider subscribing to the channel, ringing the bell so you get informed of new videos as soon as I release them. And if you would like to click the big thumb, that would be brilliant, because that really helps the channel as well. As always, I really do appreciate you spending time with me, watching my videos. So for that, thank you very much indeed. And if you've enjoyed this video, I think you might enjoy these videos as well. Thank you for watching. I will see you again very soon.